Hi, welcome to our channel where we share the most intriguing stories. When a retired federal agent seeks peace in a remote home beyond HOA reach, he finds himself in a war he never expected against a power-hungry suburban queen and her army of clipboard warriors. But she picked the wrong house and the wrong man. When I bought the place, I thought I was finally out of the system, out of the noise, out of the bureaucratic hell I used to swim in every day like it was my job. Because, well, it was. 36 years old and already a ghost in the mirror of a federal inspector. I'd seen enough corruption, incompetence, and power games to last 5 lifetimes, and I wasn't about to spend my retirement listening to some nosy HOA drone bark about lawn height. So, I found this quiet little corner of the world, Colwood County, Washington. Not the middle of nowhere, but damn close. Just a few properties out past the last cul-de-sac of Willow Pond Estates, beyond the HOA's claws. My land was a dead end, private drive, a perimeter of forest so thick even the wind hesitated to cut through it. There were no covenants, no board meetings, no pastel-colored mailboxes to match the neighbors' hydrangeas. Just me, my dog Rex, and the satisfying crackle of gravel under my boots as I walked the length of my new private driveway. On day 2 after moving in, I installed a mailbox with my name on it and hung a metal sign under it. Private drive, no trespassing, not subject to HOA regulations. Subtle as a shotgun, but necessary. The only way to deal with bullies was to let them know from the jump that you weren't going to flinch. I'd just finished mounting the plate when I saw her, power walking up my drive like she owned it. Mid-50s business casual blazer that practically screamed, "I file noise complaints for sport," clutching a plastic binder like it held divine authority. Her lips were pinched tighter than the lid on a rusted pickle jar. "You must be the new resident," she said, not offering a handshake. Her voice had that brittle, passive-aggressive tone people develop after years of fake smiling through HOA meetings. "I'm Karen Browning, president of the Willow Pond Estates Homeowners Association." She said it like I should salute. I didn't. "Nice to meet you," I said flatly. "I'm Aiden. This property isn't part of your association." She blinked. Not the polite kind of blink, the glitch in the Matrix kind. "Excuse me." I pointed at the sign. "Private parcel, no HOA." Got the county maps, title deed, plat surveys. Everything says this land has never been under your jurisdiction. Karen didn't even try to look at the sign. "Well, that may be what your documents say, but this entire cul-de-sac falls within the Willow Pond community's area of interest. You're connected to our water line. You use our road to access your property. Therefore, by communal extension, you fall under our architectural guidelines and community expectations." I actually laughed. Couldn't help it. Area of interest isn't legal authority. I'm not interested in joining, paying dues, or submitting my life to a bunch of volunteers with clipboards and superiority complexes. I bought here because it's out of your reach. She tightened her jaw. "We didn't approve your home's facade, you know, and there's a strict 2-dog maximum." "I have one," I said, gesturing toward Rex, who was sniffing her tires like they owed him rent. "Well, then your trailer," she snapped, spotting my hunting rig parked near the edge of the tree line. "It's an eyesore. It's licensed, registered, and on my property." Karen's binder came open, like she was about to serve me a damn summons, but I cut her off. "Let me save you the ink. I'm not going anywhere. You have no jurisdiction here. So unless you're selling Girl Scout cookies or asking for directions, you can turn around and walk your area of interest right back up that road." She stared at me for a beat, like she wasn't used to people saying no. Like reality was a toy she could bend until it squeaked. Then she smiled, but it wasn't a real smile. It was the kind of smile that says, "You're on my list now, friend." "You'll be hearing from the community board," she said sweetly, before spinning on her heel and storming off like she had her own wind machine. I watched her go, already guessing how this would play out. People like Karen didn't go down quietly. They didn't like fences they couldn't climb or rules they couldn't write. But this was my land, my home, and I hadn't survived Washington, D.C. politics just to be bullied by a suburban dictator with a printer. Still, I wasn't stupid. Before nightfall, I ordered another security camera, then 2 more. One for the driveway, one for the side gate, and one hidden in the tree line. I had a feeling my area of interest was about to get real crowded. I knew it wasn't over. People like Karen don't just take the L and move on. They regroup, reload, and come back in passive-aggressive formation. It didn't take long. 3 days after our delightful introduction, I found a neatly folded envelope stuck in my gate latch. No stamp, no return address, just resident typed in bold font like it was a summons from the Vatican. Inside, a violation notice from the Willow Pond Estates HOA. No legal seal, no county markings, just the same HOA logo printed in Comic Sans at the top and an itemized list of offenses. Unapproved facade color. Non-conforming trailer structure. Excess canine presence. My favorite. Incompatible mailbox aesthetic. I laughed so hard I nearly choked on my coffee. But the kicker came in the last line. Failure to address these violations within 10 business days may result in disciplinary committee action. Disciplinary committee. What was that? A tribunal of retired real estate agents. I scanned the paper and emailed it to my lawyer, a guy named Marcus out of Spokane who'd handled my purchase. He replied 15 minutes later, "Complete nonsense. You're not under HOA governance. Keep documenting everything." That night, I set up another camera facing the road, just in case. The next morning, a woman in yoga pants and a golden retriever stopped right in front of my driveway, squinting at the sign I'd posted, the one that clearly said, "Private." She pulled out her phone and started filming my house like I'd set up a meth lab. Later that day, 2 more letters arrived, this time identical notices taped to my garbage bins and stapled to my mailbox post. One read, "Your presence has not been approved." Another had the gall to say, "Pending community action, violation logged." The stapling was what got me. She'd driven onto my property line. That's when I knew. This wasn't just a power trip. This was a siege. That night, I reviewed the camera footage. Caught her, Karen herself, just before dawn, dressed like a discount spy in black sneakers and a hoodie. She parked at the end of the cul-de-sac, jogged to my mailbox like she was on a timed mission, and plastered her garbage-grade citations with zip-tie precision. Then she sprinted back like she'd just defused a bomb. I emailed Marcus again with screenshots. "This is harassment," I told him. He agreed, said to keep collecting evidence and log everything. I did. The next afternoon, I found my driveway partially blocked with construction debris, broken fence slats, a cracked toilet seat, what looked like half a swing set, just dumped like a low-effort threat. I moved it myself, but not before photographing everything from 5 angles. Rex sniffed at it like it had been marinated in HOA desperation, and then, like clockwork, Karen appeared again, this time at a safe distance, standing near the cul-de-sac in a tennis skirt and sunglasses, chatting with another couple, while blatantly pointing at my home. She held a clipboard. I could hear phrases like non-conforming structure and visual disruption to the neighborhood flow. Visual disruption. My house was half a mile from theirs and surrounded by trees. I walked to the end of the drive, leaned on the fence, and gave her my best dead-eyed stare. She smiled and waved like we were old friends. "Hi, Aiden. Just doing a routine community review," she chirped. "Try that line on someone who gives a damn," I muttered, loud enough for her friends to hear. She turned back to them with a giggle and whispered something behind her hand. That was the moment I knew she'd started the whisper campaign. The next day, a neighbor I hadn't even met, an older guy in a golf cart, drove up, parked at the edge of my drive, and asked if I intended to comply with community expectations. I asked him which expectations he was talking about, and he mumbled something about trailer codes and drove off. By the end of that week, I'd been falsely accused of architectural violations, harassed with fake citations, had garbage dumped in my driveway, filmed by at least 3 different HOA zombies, and treated like I was a squatter in my own home. So I added more cameras, floodlights, motion sensors, put "Do Not Enter" private property signs on both trees at the drive entrance. Rex got a new collar with GPS and a tag that read, "Not a violation." Still, I wasn't going to cower. I knew my rights. I had the plat map framed in my office. My land was never part of Willow Pond. The records were public, dated, and notarized. But this wasn't about documents. This was about Karen not being able to tolerate someone outside her sandbox. My presence was like a splinter under her HOA manicured nails, and she wasn't going to stop until she dug me out. What she didn't know was that I'd been through worse. A hell of a lot worse. She could file fake forms and flash her toothy fake smile all she wanted, but I dealt with cartel fronts and internal corruption back in my agency days. HOA intimidation wasn't going to break me, but it would escalate. And I could feel it coming. It was sometime around 6:15 on a Tuesday morning when I noticed the first real crack in the dam. I'd stepped outside with Rex to check the trail cameras after hearing coyotes the night before. The air was sharp, cold enough to make you wish you'd worn something thicker than a flannel. I was halfway down the gravel when I spotted it. A small stack of lumber and broken ceramic planters dumped just off my driveway again, tucked beside the tree line like a raccoon had started a landscaping business and then gone bankrupt. This time, there were boot prints, not tire marks. Footprints, 2 sets. I crouched, took photos, then followed the indentations a few feet until they merged with the soft gravel at the cul-de-sac. Whoever it was, they'd come on foot, quietly, early. I didn't have to guess. This was Karen upping the ante. Not with her own hands, of course. She had minions for that now. Later that day, I got an unexpected visit. A man in his 60s, clean-shaven khakis, Vietnam veteran cap, the kind of guy who looked like he'd rather be fishing than mediating HOA disputes, pulled up in a red Ford pickup and parked just beyond the private drive sign. I met him halfway, hands in pockets, Rex sniffing suspiciously at his boots. "Name's Mark," he said. "I live 2 lots down. Been here 20 years. Just thought I'd say hi and give you a friendly heads up." I waited. He sighed. "Karen's been on a tear. She's telling everyone you're squatting on shared access property. Said you snuck in the back way through some kind of county loophole." "Interesting theory," I said. "Does it involve space lasers and FEMA camps too?" He chuckled. "I don't buy her crap, but some folks do. HOA board's mostly her friends, people who like keeping their hydrangeas the same color and their neighbors the same flavor." I didn't say anything. Let him keep talking. "She tried the same thing with a couple from out of state a few years back. They bought a cabin right off the boundary. Karen claimed their deck projected into the community view space. They folded after a few months. Sold at a loss." I raised an eyebrow. "And you?" "I keep my head down," Mark said. "But you—" He nodded at the cameras, the fence, my private signs. "You look like you won't." I gave him a small smile. "You guessed right." He nodded and got back in his truck. "Watch your gate at night." That evening, I checked my perimeter cameras again. Around midnight, the driveway cam picked up 2 figures walking along the fence. Flashlights off, wearing dark clothing, they hovered near the side gate. One of them jiggled the handle. The other one slapped a sticker onto the post. I zoomed in on the still frame later. It read, "This property is under review, pending community action." The same damn language from the fake citations. I submitted the footage to the county sheriff's tip line with a formal complaint for trespassing. Again. But when the deputy called me the next day, his tone was bored, somewhere between "not my problem" and "welcome to rural America." "Likely kids," he said. "We'll file a report. Unless there's property damage or weapons involved, best we can do is log it." I asked if they'd at least swing by for a patrol. He said they'd try to increase visibility, which is polite cop speak for probably not. That night, I double-checked my locks, put the trail cameras on high sensitivity mode, and left one porch light on. Rex stayed close to the door. He felt it too. The tension in the air, like something just past the edge of reason, was about to snap. 2 days later, Karen returned, midday, confident. This time, she brought backup. 2 other HOA members, a man and a woman who looked like they'd been pulled directly out of a pastel catalog. They strolled up my driveway like they were inspecting a golf course, clipboards in hand. I met them at the midpoint, just past the fork where the gravel splits to my workshop. Rex stood beside me, ears perked, silent but alert. "Good afternoon." Karen beamed like this was her kingdom, and I was a particularly stubborn serf. "We're just conducting a routine community inspection." I didn't say a word, just crossed my arms. "This concerns your trailer, the solar array, and, well, your signage," said the man, tapping at his clipboard. "It's considered—" "You're not my HOA," I interrupted, voice flat. "You're not my inspectors. And this is not your land." Karen smiled tighter. "We believe this access road qualifies as a shared infrastructure feature, and if you're using community-maintained resources—" "It's a county road until halfway through the cul-de-sac, Karen," I snapped. "My drive is privately surveyed. I have maps going back 15 years. You want to see the boundary stakes? I can show you the goddamn rebar in the ground." She blinked, just for a second. Then, "You're creating unnecessary tension, Mr. Pierce. No one wants conflict." You created the conflict. I just live here." The woman in the cardigan had the nerve to lean sideways and photograph my house. I took a step forward and she stumbled back like I'd swung an axe. I kept my voice even. "You've got 5 seconds to get off my property." Karen opened her mouth again, but something must have clicked. The cameras on the house, the dog at my side, the not-so-subtle fact that I wasn't bluffing. They left. Not fast, not slow, just controlled retreat. I stood there until they were gone. Then I walked back inside, locked the door, and opened my laptop. I sent Marcus everything: the photos, the video stills, Mark's warning, the new sticker from the fence, and I added one sentence to the bottom of the email: "I think they're planning something bigger." I woke up to a knock on my door, not the hesitant kind you get from a delivery guy or a neighbor asking to borrow a ladder. No, this one was methodical, confident. 3 sharp knocks like a summons. Rex was already barking before I got to the door. I opened it and found a white envelope duct taped to the screen door. No return address, no stamp. But it had an embossed seal on the front, gold, circular, and way too official looking to be real. It read, "Willow Pond Estates Homeowners Association, Notice of Termination of Residency." Termination of what? Inside was a formal-looking letter. "Dear occupant," it began, already a red flag. "Due to multiple unresolved violations of HOA code and failure to comply with community guidelines regarding external structure conformity, unauthorized animal presence, and use of non-HOA compliant access routes, you are hereby required to vacate the premises within 72 hours. Failure to comply will result in legal escalation." The signature was typed HOA Enforcement Council Legal Affairs Division, which, for the record, is not a real thing. I turned the page. Attached was a second letter, this time from a law firm. Or it looked like it. Hudson, Reeve and Galley, LLP, Residential Compliance Council. It made reference to an active complaint filed against me for fraudulent occupancy of restricted property and warned that failure to leave would result in civil and injunctive actions with potential criminal referrals. Except the logo was pixelated. The address listed didn't match any registered firm in the state. And the formatting, sloppy, like someone had watched a courtroom drama on cable and tried to mock it up in Microsoft Word. I didn't panic. I scanned every page, saved the PDFs, and forwarded the entire thing to Marcus. He called me within the hour. "Fake," he said flatly. "The law firm doesn't exist. The HOA can't evict you. They have zero legal authority over your parcel. This is attempted intimidation. At best, a scam. At worst, fraud." I felt the edge of my jaw tighten. "Think I should go to the sheriff." "You should definitely file a report," Marcus said, "but also start a paper trail. Don't just document, escalate. The moment they set foot on your property again, it becomes a criminal matter." I thanked him, hung up, and called the county cadastral office. A woman named Dana, friendly, competent, pulled up the property survey while I was on the line. "Your lot is outside of the Willow Pond subdivision boundary by 234 feet, she said. "Never been under HOA jurisdiction. There's no recorded easement, no restrictive covenant. You're clean." She emailed me the official parcel history within 5 minutes. I had proof. Concrete, irrefutable, government-stamped proof. That night, I filed a complaint with the sheriff's department for attempted fraud and harassment. I attached the fake letters, the footage of previous trespasses, and the HOA's nonsense citations. They said they'd open an inquiry. That same evening, I found a new flyer stapled to the utility pole at the edge of the cul-de-sac. It was written like a political ad, but had no name or signature. The headline read, "Community in Danger, Rogue Resident Defies HOA Authority." There was a grainy photo of me walking my dog taken from behind. Below it, his refusal to comply endangers property values and the harmony of our neighborhood. If he won't leave, the HOA will act. It ended with some Orwellian garbage like, "Community first, order always." The next day, my neighbor Mark texted me. "You seen the Facebook group?" I hadn't. I didn't even use Facebook. He sent a screenshot from a group called Preserve Willow Pond with over 100 members. In one post, Karen wrote a manifesto-length rant accusing me of being a sovereign citizen type, of creating instability, of inviting unsavory elements to the area. I was apparently a former government agent with a record of tactical behavior, which, well, was not entirely wrong, but not something she should have known unless someone had dug. That pissed me off more than the fake eviction notice. My past wasn't public. That meant she was digging. Background checks, private info. I installed new trail cameras, bought a collapsible baton and kept it by the door, ordered solar-powered motion lights. Not out of paranoia. Out of pattern recognition. Karen was no longer just trying to annoy me. She was trying to build a case, a narrative, and she was willing to break the law to do it. Later that week, I returned from a supply run in town and found a new sticker on my fence post. Community property. Unauthorized use prohibited. That did it. I filed a second report. This time, I demanded to speak to the deputy in person. When I met with her, Deputy Ramos, mid-30s, sharp-eyed, she actually listened, watched the footage, took the letters, scanned the stickers. She nodded slowly. "You're being targeted," she said. "What you're describing is organized harassment. And if they're using fake legal documents, that's felony territory." I told her what Marcus had said, that we were prepping a civil suit, that I wasn't backing down. "You shouldn't," she said, "but I'd recommend installing internal locks too, just in case." I did. That night. And when I closed the door behind me, I realized something had shifted. They weren't just trying to scare me anymore. They were preparing to remove me, and they were about to make a very, very stupid mistake. I was gone for 4 hours. Just 4. I'd driven into town for building supplies, lumber, insulation foam, a few tools I needed to reinforce the side gate. It was supposed to be a quick trip. I grabbed a sandwich at a gas station on the way back, checked my phone once, and cruised down the familiar winding road that led to my property. Gravel spitting under the tires, forest canopy stretching above like a rib cage. Except something felt off the second I turned onto the cul-de-sac. There was a white SUV idling near the entrance to my driveway. 2 men in reflective vests stood nearby, arms crossed, radios clipped to their belts like they were guarding a nuclear facility. A third man was up by my house, standing directly on my front porch. And then I saw it. My private property, no trespassing sign was gone. In its place, nailed crudely to the gatepost, was a brand new sign. Community property, no unauthorized access. Under it, the HOA logo. Faux official, bold red letters. I hit the brakes so hard my toolboxes rattled in the bed. Rex barked from the passenger seat like he could smell the tension. I stepped out slowly, phone already in my hand, recording. "Excuse me," I said, raising my voice. "You want to explain what the hell is going on here?" The 2 men by the SUV turned in unison. Identical vests. Identical expressions. The rented kind of authority you find in mall cops and failed security guards. One of them stepped forward, hand on his radio like he was expecting backup. "Sir, this is now controlled by Willow Pond Estates," he said. "You are trespassing." I blinked. "You're standing on my land." Karen appeared from the side of the house. Of course, she was wearing a navy blue blazer, slacks, and sunglasses, like she was ready for a press conference. "You've been given ample warning, Aiden," she said, calm as a cult leader. "The board reviewed your case and determined your residence constitutes an unauthorized structure. This home is now under administrative reassignment." I actually laughed. "What the hell does that even mean?" "It means you no longer have standing," she replied. "We've posted community access notices, changed the locks, and will be installing compliance signage shortly." I looked past her. The front door, my door, now had a brand new deadbolt. A sticker slapped across the glass read, "Sealed, pending board hearing." I felt heat rise up my neck. "You broke into my house." "It's not your house," she said sharply. "You occupy land within our sphere of jurisdiction. Your failure to acknowledge HOA oversight left us no choice but to act under emergency community code authority." "None of those words mean anything," I snapped. "This is trespassing. It's breaking and entering. It's a felony." One of the goons stepped forward. "Sir, I'm going to ask you to leave the premises." I raised my phone higher. "You so much as touch me, and you're on camera assaulting a federal retiree on private land. Do you have any idea what kind of lawsuit that triggers?" The guy hesitated. Karen, on the other hand, stood her ground. "You've made this difficult for everyone, Aiden," she said. "We tried diplomacy. Now we're invoking protective measures. We won't allow this community to be destabilized by rogue actors." I stared at her, stunned. She believed this. All of it. The fantasy, the authority, the right to walk into another person's home and claim it like she'd been crowned queen of cul-de-sacs. I took 2 steps forward. One of the guards moved to intercept, hand out, stiff arm, and shoved me in the chest. Not hard, but hard enough to cross a line. Rex growled, low and savage, baring his teeth. I didn't raise my voice, didn't make a move. I just stared the guy down and said, "You just committed assault." Then I tapped my screen. And it's on camera. Karen signaled to the men like she was commanding soldiers. "Hold your position. He's baiting you." I took a breath and backed up, fingers dialing. When the dispatcher picked up, I kept my voice even. "Yes, this is Aiden Pierce. I'm at my property in Colwood County. I need immediate police assistance. There has been an unlawful entry into my home. The locks have been changed, and I am being physically prevented from entering by armed individuals posing as HOA enforcement." The dispatcher asked for details. I gave them everything, and I made damn sure Karen could hear me. "This is a forced occupation," I said clearly. "Attempted theft of property, and I believe these individuals may be armed." Karen's composure cracked just for a second. The corner of her mouth twitched. Her left hand gripped the folder tighter. She hadn't planned for resistance this formal. Not this fast. I ended the call. "Police are on their way. You'll regret escalating this." She hissed. I smiled. "I don't escalate. I document." 10 minutes later, the first cruiser pulled up. And for the first time in weeks, I felt the ground shift. Because now, it wasn't just her word against mine. It was going on record. And someone was finally going to listen. The first patrol car stopped just outside the cul-de-sac. I watched it through the viewfinder of my driveway camera, a black and white cruiser, lights on, but no sirens, 2 officers inside. A few seconds later, a second vehicle pulled up. Unmarked SUV, but I could tell by the posture of the guy who stepped out. Sheriff's deputy, probably mid-level rank, not a rookie. I stayed where I was, just off the gravel, camera rolling, phone in hand, Rex leashed at my side. The guards at my house backed off slightly, suddenly unsure where their authority ended now that actual law enforcement had shown up. Karen stood rigid, hands folded in front of her like she was about to receive an award for most delusional suburban tyrant. One of the officers, Deputy Ramos, the same woman I'd spoken to last week, approached me first. "Mr. Pierce," she nodded. "You okay?" "For now," I said. They changed my locks, put up fake signage, physically blocked me from entering my own house. Ramos turned to the unmarked SUV. The higher-ranking deputy came forward. "Sergeant Lanier," he introduced himself, professional but direct. "We're going to need to hear both sides. You mind stepping over here?" "Not at all," I said. "But let me make one thing clear before we start. Everything's been documented. Video, audio, time-stamped. I have plat maps, deed history, certified documents from the cadastral office, legal correspondence, and evidence of fraudulent letters." Karen interjected from behind them. "Officers, this individual is occupying a structure that violates our community's regulations. We've issued proper warnings, followed protocol." Lanier turned. "Ma'am, are you a licensed law enforcement agent?" She blinked. "I'm the elected president of the Willow Pond HOA." "That's not what I asked," he said, tone flat. "No," she said. "But we have an enforcement council, and according to Section B7 of our bylaws—" "Ma'am," he cut her off, "you are currently standing on private property. That means those bylaws don't apply unless there's a signed covenant or legally binding contract stating otherwise. Do you have such a document?" Karen faltered. "We have implied authority through community infrastructure use and—" Ramos coughed. "Not the sick kind, the kind that says, 'I cannot believe what I'm hearing.'" I stepped forward, held out the file I'd printed earlier. "Here's the plat survey, recorded and filed. Parcel 186B, not included in Willow Pond Estates. Here's the deed, the boundary line certification, and confirmation from Colwood County Land Office." Lanier took the documents, flipping through with a trained eye. Karen, still clinging to her fantasy, tried to recover. "Even if that's technically true, his presence is destabilizing the neighborhood. He's storing hazardous materials, ignoring aesthetic standards." "You mean my solar panels?" I asked. She didn't answer. One of the officers came up to Ramos, handed her something, a body cam playback device. "Got it all," he said. "Physical altercation caught on entry cam. Guard shoved the homeowner while denying access." Lanier's eyes hardened. He turned to the 2 security guys. "You gentlemen licensed?" They both stiffened. "We're community enforcement volunteers," one muttered. "Not licensed." "No." "Armed?" They didn't answer. Lanier nodded. "Put your radios down." "Step to the curb." They obeyed. Then he faced Karen. "Ma'am, this entire operation constitutes unlawful entry, criminal mischief, impersonation of law enforcement, and obstruction. You falsified documents, tampered with private property, and coordinated an unauthorized occupation." Karen tried to speak. "You don't understand the community tension this man has caused. I understand you broke into someone's home and tried to claim it using imaginary laws," he snapped. "That's not how the United States works." Ramos leaned toward me. "You want to press charges?" "Yes," I said without hesitation. "On all of them." Karen's mask cracked then. Not slowly. All at once. The smugness, the composure, the rehearsed speeches collapsed into sheer, spluttering disbelief. "You can't arrest me. I'm protecting the community." "You're under arrest for felony trespass, document forgery, criminal conspiracy, and obstruction of justice," Lanier replied as he motioned for the cuffs. Ramos cuffed her while Karen shouted phrases like, "You're making a mistake," and "He doesn't belong here," and "This is harassment." I stood still, watching as she was loaded into the cruiser, eyes darting like she was still searching for someone to take her side. But nobody did. The two guards were also detained, cuffed quietly, less dramatic, but no less satisfying. The cruiser doors shut with a heavy finality that echoed through the pines. Lanier handed me a business card. "We'll need you to come down to give a formal statement. And," he nodded toward the house, "we'll get a locksmith out here ASAP. That lock's evidence now." I nodded. "Appreciate it." "You handled this well," he added. I didn't say anything. Just looked out over the gravel road, the last sunlight of the day catching the tops of the trees. Rex sat beside me, tail wagging slowly, sensing the tension break. They came for my home, and I stood my ground. The house felt different the next morning. Not quieter. It had always been quiet, but freer. Like someone had lifted a lead blanket off the roof and let the air flow properly again. The locks had been changed overnight by a county locksmith. The old hardware was sealed in an evidence bag and tagged with a case number. I'd watched it happen. It felt like reclaiming something that never should have been taken. Rex, sensing the tension had broken, finally slept soundly by the fireplace. I didn't. Not yet, because the fight wasn't over. Not until every lie was dragged into the light, dissected, and nailed to the wall with a court seal. Marcus and I spent the next week building the case. He was in rare form, tracking every name from those forged HOA letters, cross-referencing signatures, locating shell P.O. boxes and fake firms. He found out Hudson, Reeve, and Galley didn't exist in any legal database. The domain name had been registered 2 weeks prior, using a prepaid account and a fake address in Oregon. Even better, the IP address tied to the email they'd sent matched a network assigned to the Willow Pond Estates Community Clubhouse. They didn't even cover their tracks. Meanwhile, the sheriff's office filed formal charges against Karen and 2 of her board members. Forgery, trespassing, criminal conspiracy, unauthorized occupation, impersonation, and more. One of the fake guards flipped almost immediately, giving up every detail. How Karen had organized the plan, called it a reclamation action, and promised them they'd be protected by community precedent. Turned out, Karen had a long history of borderline harassment, half a dozen HOA complaints over the years, most settled quietly. But she'd never tried anything this bold before. I was a new variable. I didn't cave. When the court date came, I sat front row in a button-down shirt and clean jeans, just behind Marcus. Karen showed up with a high-dollar defense attorney and zero humility. Her expression, somewhere between righteous indignation and "I still think I'm winning," didn't shift for most of the proceedings. Until the projector came on. Marcus played every second of the footage. The signs, the trespass, the lock changing, the confrontation, the shove. He laid out the forged documents one by one and read every mismatch aloud. Then he pulled out the county plat map, blown up and highlighted, showing my parcel's isolation from Willow Pond with surgical clarity. The courtroom was silent except for the occasional sound of a gavel tapping paper. Karen's defense stuttered through an argument about community cohesion and perceived jurisdiction. The judge, a woman in her late 50s with no time for suburban fantasies, shut it down instantly. "This is not a question of perception," she said. "This is a question of property law and criminal fraud." Karen was found guilty on all counts. The board members pled out. One turned state's witness to avoid jail. The other got 6 months for criminal mischief and obstruction. Karen, 9 years, 3 for conspiracy, 3 for forgery, 3 for criminal trespass and impersonation of authority. She was handcuffed at sentencing. I didn't look away. A few weeks later, I received a letter from the county court, a civil judgment in my favor. Karen and the Willow Pond HOA were liable for damages totaling $320,000, property damage, legal fees, emotional distress, and punitive sanctions. The HOA's insurance dropped them like a hot rock. The board was dissolved. A full state audit followed. I heard 3 other board members quietly sold their homes before indictments could be finalized. One of them was a former municipal official, retired early, disappeared, and just like that, the empire collapsed. They'd built their power on silence, but I hadn't stayed silent. I stayed documented. The sheriff's office offered me a formal apology for the slow initial response. I didn't ask for it, but I appreciated it. They added extra patrols in the area. Deputies dropped by sometimes just to say hi. I didn't mind. The neighbors changed too. The ones who used to glare or whisper now waved. Some stopped to chat. Mark, the guy from the red Ford, came by with a 6-pack one evening and said, "I've lived here 20 years. Never seen anyone stand up to her like that." I just smiled. She picked the wrong house. By autumn, I'd built a new fence, heavy posts, reinforced steel gate. At the front, I mounted a solid aluminum plaque. Private property, non-HOA, no access. Below it, trespassers will be prosecuted. Yes, really. I even added a smaller sign beneath that, as a joke. "Hello, Karen. Rex got a new doghouse. Not because he needed it, but because he'd earned it. Custom built, insulated, cedar lined. He preferred the fireplace, but still sniffed it with pride like he knew it was his. I didn't hang curtains for a while. I liked seeing the trees at dusk, the way the wind moved through them freely. And I liked knowing no one would ever try to own them again. 6 months later, the mailbox still stood where I first planted it. A bit weather-worn now, the private drive, no trespassing sign slightly faded by the Pacific Northwest rain. But solid. It had become something more than a warning. It was a statement. People stopped asking if I was part of the HOA after the local newspaper ran the story. Retired federal agent wins lawsuit against rogue HOA takeover. Judge cites gross abuse of authority. They even used a photo of Rex in the article, tongue out, sitting beside me like he was the one who delivered the verdict. Karen was still in county lockup last I heard. Her attorney filed an appeal, of course. Denied. Twice. There wasn't much wiggle room when your crimes are captured in 1080p from 5 angles with timestamps, body cams, and notarized maps stapled to every filing. Willow Pond Estates, what was left of it, dissolved their board entirely. A few homeowners tried to revive it under a new name, Willow Unity Council or some cult-sounding nonsense, but nobody wanted to touch it with a 10-foot pole. The audit scorched everything. Ghost payments, misuse of community funds, unrecorded compliance patrols. Karen had been keeping files on residents like she was running her own HOA CIA. One of the old board members, Diane, I think, tried to apologize in a shaky email. "We didn't know it would go that far," she wrote. "She told us you were dangerous." I didn't respond. If you followed orders from someone like Karen, you didn't get a pat on the back for quitting late. I spent the winter fixing things, repainted the shutters, rewired the shed, cut new walking trails through the woods behind the house. There was something therapeutic about it, not just restoring, but reclaiming. Every nail I drove, every plank I sanded was mine and mine alone. No architectural committee, no fines for having the wrong shade of tan. The silence out here felt different now. It wasn't defensive anymore. It was earned. I got a letter from the county last week. Turns out the case had spurred a legislative proposal. A new local ordinance aimed at limiting HOA overreach and requiring better documentation of jurisdictional boundaries. They were calling it Pierce's Law, unofficially. I didn't ask for that, but I appreciated it. Sometimes you fight for yourself and change things for others in the process. Rex turned 7 this spring. I built him a ramp to the porch, though he still insists on leaping up like he's half his age. Good dog. Never flinched, never growled without reason. Always knew who the real threats were. A few of the neighbors, the quiet ones, invited me to a cookout last weekend. I went. I brought ribs. Someone made a joke about not bringing HOA citations as party favors, and we all laughed, even me. And it was real. That was the surprise. Not that I won, but that after everything, the place started to feel like home again. Not the property. The people, not all of them, sure, but enough. I still keep the cameras up, still keep backups of every document and video filed and time-stamped, just in case someone else gets ideas. I'm not paranoid. I'm prepared. There's a difference. One morning, walking the tree line with a thermos in one hand and Rex trotting beside me, I spotted a small cardboard sign nailed to a tree just off the property boundary. Karen was here, handwritten, marker, a joke maybe, maybe not. I took it down, burned it, and pissed on the ashes. Then I looked at my house, standing strong in the clearing. Solid, quiet, home. I left federal service to find peace. I said aloud, not to anyone, just to the air. And I found it. I paused. But if anyone ever tries to take it again... Rex looked up, tail twitching. I'll bury them under the HOA charter.